Our wonderful speaker Vasily Kudrin will pick up on the following topic. I must say that he has a lot of experience in speaking at our debates. He spoke on a similar topic 4 years ago. I must say, many of the things that he then designated as trends seemed fantastic and a little shocking. But they actually turned out to be absolutely true. So I look forward to hearing from him this year. Then, after a certain number of years, we will be able to check and see again whether our sincere speaker got to the point, like last time. I think we, indeed, will have some very interesting predictions about our professional future and future of our businesses.
Good day, my name is Vasily Kudrin. Indeed, 4 years ago, in 2016, I made a similar presentation on trends and forecasts in GRC area. Corporate governance, risk, and control, compliance. This year I would like to make some update of these trends. Of course, it was difficult to predict a pandemic. But, for some reason, the situation with the pandemic ensured that those predictions came true. Including the situation that concerns distributed or remote work, which I will also talk about today. My experience is about 20 years, I have been working both in the real sector, at top positions in GRC, that is corporate governance, risk and control, and in advisory, one Big Four company. Now I work at HL Bivnesh Audit, which is an assurance and consulting firm. I have also been on the boards of a number of professional organizations. For example, Institute of Internal Auditors, or Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. I also actively and often take part in December debates. The Debate Club. I am very well familiar with organization of international studies, focusing on different forecasts, trends. How different specialists perceive trends. What will happen in the future? I was myself involved in organizing such studies. By this year's end, I did my own research on what other businesses, investment banks, consulting firms, big tech companies are foreseeing in this area. That is, again, corporate governance, risks, control, compliance. I found this very interesting point. Very diverse opinions as to what will happen. Different terms are used. Various aspects related to different technologies and trends are considered. And this suggests that, in principle, there is no clear understanding of what will happen. So, it looks like, this is the informational, technological singularity that already affects our society. Specialists and professionals do not really understand and cannot clearly identify even forecast directions. Although, in common, everyone talks about the digital agenda. That it is necessary to treat the organization of human work differently. A lot of talk is on how regulators and legal systems react to what happens. Anyway, I studied all this. Looked and did my little study on 9 trends. That ones, in my opinion, are useful to look at. To understand what traditional practical corporate governance, risk, control, compliance and internal audit professionals can do. And how to get the possible benefits and advancing development from it. These 9 trends can be broken down into 3 blocks. Firstly, it's everything related to law and compliance. Further, for trends concerning the main aspects of transformation. How they affect life of companies and their development. Also a few trends that relate specifically to organization of work. In addition, there is such a term from the Soviet era. It's life safety, or how companies organize their workspace. And, in general, work of specialists in order to avoid any medical risks. And, of course, the digital agenda. The first trend is regulatory transformation. It should be noted that inefficiency of traditional legal systems is growing. They do not react very well to what happens. This was very clearly seen as the pandemic spread. Many people, small businesses, medium-sized businesses, even large businesses, have felt it very well. It even affects specific people. Everyone knows how many inadequate digital fines occurred. That had to be paid. And here GRC specialists need to know about available opportunities. It is a risk assessment to help companies assess risks. In addition, the compliance systems developed in-house must be flexible. It is necessary to build such systems that do not just give a picture or registers of compliance risks. It has to be understood that government agencies, legal, law enforcement systems, will keep on being more and more ineffective. Today the boundaries are blurring. The borders between states, and the boundaries between technologies, between organizations. Finally, in general, between people communities. People that were previously, and are still largely represented, by the states. Law institutes. New internet-based communities emerge and develop. People build connections differently. And that should motivate companies to not just get hung up on reacting very toughly to various legal and compliance risks. It is necessary to identify and respond to only those risks that matter. There is a transformation of regulators' work, regulatory models. This is where GRC professionals can benefit. For example, they can participate in the regulators' initiatives, or assess and help companies correctly assess regulatory risks. The next trend is the distributed labor economy. This trend is understandable, because we already felt it very well. This will continue. It is not only because of the pandemic that life safety risks have become relevant. In principle, these are the same requirements of government agencies that, often inadequately, put pressure on businesses, forcing them to go into remote work and, accordingly, prevent the spread of the pandemic. The pandemic will anyway be over. But it is possible that some new global and serious challenges will appear, that will again lead to the situation when government agencies will demand certain behavior from business. At the same time, the legal system helps to develop norms. In our country, we have developed a law on remote work. This is also the reason for the trend. Benefits of remote work themselves have become apparent to many. This is saving on personnel, saving on logistics costs. It even improves control. Also, in general, development of a part-time job economy, gig economy. Because information environment becomes more crowded, interactive, many people, especially those of the millennial generation, do not see the need to be attached to a particular company. Accordingly, they earn and live freely in conditions of such part-time jobs, freelancing. Also, the trends factor is the efficiency of cloud technologies. Those cloud technologies that allow organizing such distributed work between different people and teams. Finally, if we are talking about GRC specialists, it is the use of the project approach that is often their work basis. The project approach itself must allow you to quickly, effectively respond to changes that more and more often will occur in our life. The next trend is about life safety. I do not think the pandemic will end and life safety risks will go away, and will be out of agenda. I think that for the next 10 years this is one of the key categories of risks. I remember doing a risk assessment for one aviation company. There we evaluated pandemic risks. This was the period 2016 to 2017 years. I drew attention that pandemic risks, although they seem somehow irrelevant, in fact, if they do happen, it will be a disaster for the company. Nevertheless, specialists within the company were reluctant to assess them as highly inherent. The most interesting thing is that 2 to 3 years have passed, and it became just a catastrophic risk for the company. So these risks must be included in the agenda, in our programs. Moreover, it does not just have to be some piles of papers lying there on the dusty shelves of some health safety, environment department. In principle, these should be quite serious risks that will have to be assessed. For our specialists this will be a very interesting area to develop. The next trend is related to the fact that innovation, transformation based on advanced technologies, is becoming more and more disruptive. This is due to the speed of origination and simply the spread of different ideas, which appear more and more. And this is the speed of their implementation. It is also that companies compete on the basis of these technologies. The fact that new business models appear, such as subscriptions, freemium, some kind of decentralized systems. In general, models of human interaction, that is, different decentralized finance, digital finance, ecosystems. These are new ways of organizing human interaction. When some centralized system, company, is not required, in general. This is a blurring of boundaries. In particular, there is no need to tie yourself to work in a particular country. You can use the available widespread technologies for translation into a foreign language. Now finding work abroad is easy enough. In addition, there is an uncertainty, singularity increase. All this leads to the situation and innovations are more and more disruptive. However, they also become beneficial. It is worth paying attention of GRC specialists. It helps improve processes. It assists in optimizing costs. This generally improves control. It also provides various additional benefits, allows you to enter new markets, to ensure geographical distribution of work and processes. In general, it gives more freedom. Therefore, innovations and transformation projects in general should be the majority of work. At least 50%, for internal control, audit, and compliance departments. This slide presents an approach, developed by me, to constructive transformation. You can look at it. It assumes the following. You need to understand how different sets of technologies affect, or can affect the industry and your company. You also need to correctly select and prioritize these technologies. It is necessary to develop a transformation plan, a roadmap, and define competencies. Further, to implement this plan. Finally, always track how it ensures growth. The anti-crisis role is very interesting. I think the crisis is not over. In fact, what happened on financial markets is not a reflection that the crisis is over. It is rather a kind of positive wave, which happened after the pandemic's first wave passed. In fact, everything becomes clear, if you look at the same financial markets. When we see companies whose price/earnings ratio simply does not correspond to even basic, psychologically adequate levels, we must understand the following. This may eventually collapse. Even the tech giants. And this will lead to serious financial consequences. I am afraid here to predict specifically. However, it seems to me that a more serious economic, factually structural, crisis will occur in the next 2 to 3 years. And it will require involvement of specialists of our work area. I'll probably borrow your attention for another 3 to 4 minutes. I myself have already experienced 3 economic crises. And every time when a crisis strikes, internal auditors and controllers begin to develop a program for the company that helps to fight this crisis. I believe that now we need to think about further business continuity programs. Moreover, even such a smooth business transformation. That is, come up with approaches for the company that will help it flexibly rebuild when any problems arise. In addition, come up with development and anti-crisis strategy. The role of digital investigations is becoming very relevant. Here are investigations using various information technologies, in Internet. The latest investigations by our opposition people show this very well. How effective digital investigations can be. That gives a very interesting picture. And here our specialists can very well help themselves in development. Finally, let's talk about digital agenda. Digital agenda is a driving force, whatever one may say. This is the basic, digital, technology that determines everything. I remember that in the Institute, Finance Academy, I was doing research on Constructive waves. These are 50 to 55-year economic cycles, or waves, which embrace base technologies shaping economy for several years. The previous cycle was related to telecommunications. Now the wave of recession is coming to an end. And the new cycle is beginning that will shape the economy for the next 50 years. And, in fact, this is just the beginning. Because our most powerful supercomputers, the leading intelligent machines, are far from being perfect. It takes another 30 to 40 years to provide effective artificial intelligence. In order to achieve at least some visible level of achievement, comparable to an average human. So here are 4 trends in focus. This is all about data, collecting, processing, using data. Data-driven predictive analytics. Development of neural networks. Secondly, that is all about corporate digital hygiene. These are processes and areas to be addressed that keep digital aspects of a company clean in stakeholders' view. These are data privacy, cybersecurity. This is about the ethics of social media marketing. This is how a company responds to activism of different shareholders, stakeholders. This is when various mass actions, related to social problems, happen. Me Too, BLM, etc. When stakeholders are demanding that a company is aligned with these values. It is also, as I said previously, associated with millennials' culture. The generation born in the mid-1980s. This generation, in general, determines now, what values for companies should be fundamental. And it is very important. These are cloud technologies and everything related to collective investments, interaction in decentralized financial systems. This is very relevant. I recently observed development of one decentralized system that came into being in May. It was connected with history of Telegram Open Network. Friedman. Now my capitalization is around $400 million. That is, in 6 months it has grown simply from talks, with presence of a certain technology, to such a volume, capitalization on exchange. There are about 500 active people there, although about 10,000 are involved. Its capitalization on the exchange, taking into account the cryptotoken price and the circulating supply provided by these tokens, is $400 million. This is a very good result. Finally, digital investigations. These are such cyber assurance studies, when the use of different internet systems, databases, data comparisons is heavily enacted. Many people do not understand that everything we do today will be tracked and seen someday. And such digital investigations, internet journalism, for example, show this very well. They quickly get this data, collect the evidence base, and show specific examples of fraud. Specific crimes, which took place, accordingly. I have presented these 9 trends. In fact, you can look at these trends in different ways, highlight different aspects. However, I think, it gives a very good big picture. It is worth paying attention to these aspects. This will provide a good development for various experts in practical corporate governance. Thanks for attention. If you have any questions, please look at my contacts. I am always ready to answer and give interesting and practical information on this matter.
Thank you, Vasily. I think, if someone has questions, we'd also like to hear them at the conference. We are all interested. There was a lot of useful information. I would like to say the following. Yesterday there was a speech by Stanislav Matrovich. He made similar observations. He began his presentation with Constructive waves, then with technological layers that take shape every 10 years. I really like that the importance of classical education manifests itself. This may be the effect of the December debates. That we are trying not only to focus into current business. We are trying to go from classical approaches that work in the long run. They work well, I confirm.